Welcome back to Gloved Up Garage. I've got something a little different than what I normally do on the channel today, and that is these arcade guns. These belong to a Terminator 2 arcade gun or arcade machine. Big stand-up arcade with a screen, and these things would be mounted on a platform, and you shoot at the robot Terminators, whatever they're called. And I've got a friend that restores these machines and does upgrades and stuff like that. And he had asked me to paint these guns after I did a Terminator 2 pinball machine. It turned out really, really nice. I didn't put it on the channel because it took me a long time to do it. And I didn't think it would be anything you guys would want to see. If that is something you want to see, drop it down in the comments, let me know. But so I painted that pinball machine. It turned out awesome. He asked me if I could tackle these guns for him. Yeah, absolutely no problem. I can paint them whatever color you want. And while I was thinking about it, I said, why don't we do something a little different? Why don't we weather these to look worn and beaten up and, make them look a little bit more realistic than just these black plastic guns that they are. I said, I can weather these edges. They have a lot of texture and a lot of stuff that would look really cool with some different colors on it, and then we'll just clear coat it with like a flat clear to seal it in, keep it from coming off on your hands or anything. So he agreed, and well, that's what I'm going to do. So this is kind of my artistic side of things. I've done some model cars that are weathered. Didn't really set out to do it that way, but had a couple of things that just kind of worked out better as a weathered vehicle than they did as some bright, shiny model. So I'm going to start off with cleaning both of these and scrubbing them down really good to get all the oils and stuff, because we're talking 30 years of humans holding these guns, and there's going to be oil and stuff all over them. After they're clean, I'm going to scuff them with a gray scuff pad, which is like about a 600 to 800 grit sandpaper. That's going to get down inside of all of these textures and give me a really good surface to apply the first coat to. So this is just Rust-Oleum Chrome. This is going to give me a base layer of paint that we're going to rub through these other paints to get to. So you always want to start off with whatever your I guess your medium would be. So in this case, I want it to look like metal. The first coat of paint that I put on this is going to be something that looks metal. From there, I'm going to build it up. I'm going to go with this dark walnut color. We'll go with a bronze, and then to top that off will be a flat black. And then once all the weathering is done, we'll clear this with a flat clear to seal it. So I'm going to grab some scuff pads and some degreaser and get to work on these things. Before I can do any paint, I've got to clean those things. So I'm going to get these cans out of my way and crack open brand new roll of paper towels. We'll get those out of the way also. And then these are the gray scuff pads that I'm going to use to scuff those up. You can use any kind of wax and grease remover that you want. They do make some water-based stuff. I prefer solvent-based just because it opens the plastic pores a little better, I think. And there's really no rhyme or reason to it other than that you want to clean this really, really good. And like I said, these are arcade machines. Little kids are handling these things. All kinds of people are going to be walking through, touching these things. I mean, if you think about it, if you're walking through an arcade and these guns are sitting there on this machine, it's going to be really enticing to walk up there and touch them. And then one of the added benefits of this game is it has like a recoil solenoid. So as you fire, it gets a little bit of a kick from that solenoid. So again, I mean, as a kid, you're walking through, you see something like that, arcade game, it's really attractive. Well, you all know, I know, kids don't have the cleanest hands. And anything like this is going to be touched on by pretty much everybody. So we're going to clean that really good. That's just one pass with the cleaner. The point that I want to get to is where when I wipe this down, that there's really nothing on the paper towel that comes off. You know, nothing to discolor the paper towel is what I'm trying to get at. I want to make sure I get down to all these little cracks inside the Midway logo, which we'll do a little bit of weathering on that too. Inside the trigger guards. All right. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to show the process on each and every part. I'll go ahead and knock one of these out, and then I'll do the other one off camera. So I'm not really sure exactly what these guns are modeled after. They have a little bit of like an Uzi look to them, and then they've got a little bit of like a Tech 9 look. It really, handguard looks more, and like this looks more Uzi-ish, but then like the front looks like Mac 11, Mac 10. And I'm just trying to get every little nook and all this built up nastiness that's on there. Now I'll do another wipe down before I actually apply paint. This is just my initial. I'm going to get all this crud and stuff off before I start my sanding process. Alright, so now that that's good and clean, just going to take a 3M gray scuff pad. Again, these are like 600, 800 grit, something like that. We want to knock as much shiny off of this as we can. And I've just discovered there's a crack in that. So we're probably going to have to do some reinforcing on the back side, because I do not want this to come apart on him in the future. So I will need to discuss with him exactly how this thing mounts, because I don't want that to be an issue. I don't want this thing to come apart on him. Obviously, after we put all this work into this. So I'm not trying to like remove the top layer of plastic. I'm just trying to knock the shininess off of the plastic. And with that shiny knocked off, that'll give the paint a little something to stick to. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to do, is just get the paint to stick. Krylon and Rust-Oleum both, this is Rust-Oleum brand paint, but they both advertise that the stuff goes right over top of plastic. It may, but in my experience, especially with the auto body side of things, the more mechanical adhesion you can give something, like AKA with a scuff pad or sandpaper, the better it's going to stick and the longer it's going to last. So, especially when we're putting this much time into it, you know, we want it to last as much as possible. Alright. So, you can see the difference between the two. This has been sanded really good. This hasn't been sanded at all, it's just been cleaned. So this is kind of what we're going for. I'll do another wipe down of this and get all of this dust and stuff that I've created, just to make sure it's 100% clean. That crack really bothers me. I'll have to seal that with something. If I do it from the back side, I think it'd be less likely to show and less likely to cause a problem. So, I'm going to reach out to him real quick before I take the next step and make sure that he's okay with that, make sure the dimensions are going to be okay so that I can reinforce that from the back side, and then I'll show you guys what I'm going to do. So I talked to the owner, and he is okay with me adding some reinforcement to the back side where this crack is. I will have to be very careful about how deep I set this reinforcement, because if I go too far, I'm going to go through the outside of the gun, and that's not what I want to do. It's going to make a ton of work for myself. But if I go too shallow, then it's going to stick out, and where this mounts onto the pole that goes up into the machine could cause some issues and distort and things like that. So what I'm going to be using are these metal staples, and they go into a plastic welding gun, which just happens to be one that I bought off of Amazon and runs off of Milwaukee M18 batteries. And it's very simple. You just insert the staple up into the gun, and then we're going to get this relatively close to where it needs to be, because I'm going to pull the trigger on this. It's going to heat the staple up. I'm going to embed the staple into the plastic, and then as soon as it gets in there, right below the surface, I can pull that out. And that is very well reimbursed. It did not go through the outside. You can still see the cracks right there, which we won't worry about that. But the main purpose of this is to grab the plastic on both sides of the crack so that it will reinforce it. I don't know why I said reimburse. I'm trying to say reinforce. So last one I'm going to do right there, after this cools off for a second, put that staple up into the gun. All right. And then same thing. I'm going to heat this up. And then pull it out of there. All right, so same thing. It's in the plastic, embedded into it. Nothing showing from the outside, which is the goal here. I don't want anything to show. The crack will be okay. We'll fill that with paint. But now we've got all of this crack that was in here is now repaired. So what I'll do is I'll take my Dremel tool and I'll cut these little legs off of the staples. Just do a real quick knockdown to make sure that they're not going to interfere with the rod that comes up through here that actually mounts the gun onto the machine. All right, I got my safety squints on. I'm going to turn my Dremel down. I don't need it to be extremely fast. All right. So we got all those legs off of there. And I think we're good. We're right below the surface. Yeah. All right. So that's nice and solid. That's not going to go anywhere. I can go ahead and clean this up. Move on to the next gun. I don't see anyone else with cracks in them, so that's a plus, which is odd. That was just the first one I happened to grab, and it had a little crack in it. So, all right, I'm going to clean this stuff up. We'll get back to paint prep. With that disaster averted, I can start the prep process on the other half of this thing. now we got both sides sanded down. I'm going to take another rag, clean rag. My wax and grease remover. All of these textures and stuff that this thing has. It's going to look really cool. I think it's going to turn out awesome. And if it doesn't turn out awesome, I can always just paint it black and give it to him and say, hey, it just didn't work out. Here's your freshly painted guns. That's the cool thing about doing something like this, is that I have a little artistic freedom with it, and if it doesn't work out, worst case scenario, he gets the guns that he wanted to begin with. So, all right, that is pretty clean. We'll wet the other side of this and clean that gun. He did show me pictures of the cabinet that he redid. He did a great job for shooting with spray cans in his driveway. And I asked him, I said, do you have a new appreciation for how much work goes into applying paint and, you know, making it look decent? It's a lot of prep. It is a lot of work. And you don't really get the satisfaction out of it until you're, you know, to the point where you're putting paint onto it. And then you get to see all the little spots you missed and stuff like that. And yeah, he agreed with me. He found a new appreciation for all of the paint and the prep work that goes into this stuff. And, you know, he might have learned why it took me about 2 months worth of weekends to get that pinball case to him. I don't know what you're thinking. Hey, why weren't you working on stuff out here in the garage while that was going on? Well, I couldn't, because it was too cold. It was too nasty out here. And I needed to be at work. And I was able to kind of knock some stuff out on those cabinets while I was at work. So, that is all wiped down. I'm going to blow these off real quick, and yeah, we will shoot the first layer of silver on. So you can see not 100% covered, still a lot of black showing, but the main thing I got was a good light coat over the entire surface. Even this bottom side down here has got some on it. I actually think that looks pretty cool the way it is. We may come back to that if everything else doesn't work. This actually looks really cool. So I'm going to hang this up on the garage door track, grab the other one, and go get a coat. All right, there's the other half. Pretty good coat on it. Very nice and light. And then I'll come back and hit this with a much more wetter coat in about 20 to 30 minutes. That second coat of the metallic chrome silver is on the guns, and it looks really good. I've got good coverage. The coverage side doesn't much matter. Like, it's a little light here, which will be fine when I start to lay some of these other colors on over top of it. I'm really just worried about coverage, like on the edges and stuff like that, because that's where it's going to show wear in real life if it was, you know, like a real gun. So what I've got for the next color is this bronze color. which will kind of look like rusted metal, and it will give us the appearance of the edges being worn down to metal, and then stepping back from the edge a little bit, this bronze color will show through. It'll kind of look like rust around the edges, and then from there we'll stack the next color. So I'm gonna hang these back up, shoot them with the bronze, and then I'll come back once I got them coated with this bronze. The first coat of bronze is on, and it looks great. Just a dusting coat to go over top of that chrome silver, and then we'll build another coat, maybe 3 on this, just to see how it turns out. So far, I'm really happy with the coverage. It's going to give me a good look to come off of the edges and give it some texture. So we'll let this set up. I'll put 2 more pretty good coats of that bronze on, and we'll move on to the next color. That last coat of bronze, which actually turned out being 3 coats, looks really good, nice and smooth. I like the color. This is going to wear really well. So the next thing I'm going to move on to is going to be this dark walnut, which is going to give us a very browny black. And then from there, we'll move on to just a straight flat black. And it's nice and warm out today, which means this paint's going to dry fast, which is awesome. I can hurry up and get through this and start the weathering process a little later in this video. So next thing, walnut brown. All right, I got 2 light coats of brown on here, and now I'm going to switch to the black. This will be the last color that I put on for now. We'll see how it turns out. I normally don't like to switch brands of paint while I'm doing something like this, but Rust-Oleum has been all of the undercoats. The Krylon is just going to be my top coat, which most of the top coat's going to kind of get sanded off. So I'm not real worried about it. The only thing that will concern me is when I go to do the dull clear to kind of seal all of this in, I'll probably wind up using a Krylon dull clear just to avoid any kind of further interaction between the paints. So I'm going to hit it with the black and come back. The last coat of black has been applied. These things are good and cured. I've let them sit for several days and let that paint just kind of bake onto the surface. So the next step in this is the actual weathering process. And the way that we're going to do that is I'm going to take some sandpaper and just kind of lightly go over these edges that would in real life catch a lot of wear as you're bumping into things and stuff like that. You know, again, this is Terminator 2. It's, you know, end of the world type deal. You're going to be bumping into buildings and fences and stuff with your gun while you're shooting at the robots. So all of the edges that are going to be worn, these things are going to be tore up. They're going to have some scars on them. And that's ultimately what we want to do, is make these things look as beat up as possible. And how you do that is wearing out all of these different layers of paint to expose like the silver underneath. And then you just kind of bring out the colors from those edges. I'm going to grab some sandpaper, probably some rubbing alcohol, and then I'm going to set up the stand and kind of give you an over-the-shoulder look as I start the weathering process. So I'm going to get the process started with the weathering. And to make this a little bit easier, I've got one of these Norton soft touch pads. This is like a 600 grit sandpaper, basically on a sponge. What that's going to do is allow me to hit some of these high spots, which is going to start the weathering process and make it a little easier, because when I use the alcohol and the paper towel to kind of wear through these top layers of paint, it takes a lot to get through this down to, you know, the lower colors like the silver and stuff like that. So essentially what I'm trying to do is make the edges worn. Now I've already done this one here, and you can tell all the edges are worn. Looks really good. I put some wear on the grip, stuff like that. So this one turned out really good. I wanted to kind of test it out before I actually got it on camera. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to start the process with this sandpaper, again hitting high spots, and then we'll move on to the paper towels and the alcohol. To protect my kitchen table that I'm sitting at, just got a bag in here and some of the old paper towels that I used from the first one. But essentially what I like to do with this is kind of go in the direction of the wear. So you would typically think, you know, from the front to the rear, you know, from the top to the bottom, something like that. And I'm just going to do this like one side at a time to kind of make things a little easier. Take this in chunks. If you try to do it all at one time, you'll kind of get lost. Not really lost on what you're doing, but you want to focus. For me, it's easier to focus on one side at a time. So I'm going to scuff this up. Just kind of go through here and knock some of these edges. I don't want to get too aggressive with it because I don't want it to actually start to wear past the silver and get into the black plastic below it. I just want to try to thin out the paint a little bit so that the alcohol and the paper towel do a majority of the abrasion. Alright, so I'm going to set that aside. Now, with the paper towel, I just rip off one, and I've been folding it kind of in half, maybe into like quarters. And then that gives me a nice area where I can put my finger over top of it, put some pressure. And with the alcohol, I'm using denatured alcohol. This is a really old can, but you can use rubbing alcohol. I've found that like 91% rubbing alcohol does a pretty good job. It cuts through paint really fast. So for this, I'm not really sure what the percentage of this is. I know it's enough to probably eat through the finish of the table, and that's one of the reasons I've got that bag down. You can see it starts to kind of feather out colors from the edges that we wore with the sandpaper. Now the more you rub on this with the paper towel, of course, the more it's going to come apart. It's going to start to get through some of the top layers of paint, like that last black that I put on there. I really don't want to get too far into it, but if I can get into like the bronze and the silver, that's kind of like going to have the most pop. So that's where I really want to be. Get a little bit more alcohol and put it on the other end of the paper towel. And again, just using kind of a back and forth. I'm not really putting a lot of pressure on it. Just kind of pushing down, give it a little bit of pressure. Not trying to wear past the paint. Just trying to take it off a little bit by a little bit. My dogs are walking around wondering what the heck I'm doing. Alright. So far, so good. This is a repetitive process that takes many times on one side, and then I'll switch, go to the top, do the other side, go to the back, the front, and the bottom of the gun. You kind of get an idea of how this works. And there's really no guide for this to tell you this is where you need to be. This is where the artistic nature of this kind of takes over. You just have to figure out how far into the lower colors you want to go before you want to stop. That one, the other gun here, I've got probably about an hour working with the different colors and sanding and all that stuff. So I'm figuring this one's going to be about the same. So I don't want to bore you guys. I know this has already been taking a long time. I'm going to switch to time lapse so that you can see how this process works. And this is the final product. So I hit this with a more satin clear. This is like a flat clear. I wanted them to look a little different, but they still look really cool. You can see the metal look to the edges, the worn texture, stuff like that. I think it turned out really good. What do you guys think? Drop a comment down below. Let me know. Is this something you would like to see more of in the future? Because I do work on parts for this guy quite often for arcade, pinball machines, stuff like that. I'm okay with putting it on the channel if you guys want to see how some of this stuff works. So, for now, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for the support, the likes, subscribes, all those things. And remember to stay gloved up.